Join me today for a follow-up to the Warhammer versus BattleTech video, where we're going to discuss some of the negative things you might come across regarding BattleTech and Catalyst. Welcome to the Geek Cabal channel. My name is Bobby, and like I said, today this is going to be a follow-up to the last Warhammer 40K and BattleTech video, where I argued in favor of you should take up BattleTech instead of Warhammer 40K. However, if you choose to do so, either as a refugee from the grim dark future of Warhammer 40K, or if you just happen to stumble across it and say, hey, BattleTech sounds awesome, let me check it out, you are going to possibly come across some negative things about BattleTech and Catalyst games, and I suppose Wizkids. I mean, we may as well cover all of it here. So, I don't consider any of the things I'm about to say game breakers, figuratively or literally. There are issues. You know, no company's perfect. And this is an attempt to re-record this video once I had the other one done and released and got some feedback on it. And another incident has occurred that you're probably going to hear about, so we'll get more complete coverage here. So anyway, there have been a handful of things that have happened over the last couple of years that what might give one pause before jumping on board with the current state of BattleTech. And there's going to be a third video in this series where I explain if you want to play BattleTech, but for whatever reason, you would prefer to not buy the current stuff, which I don't advocate for that, by the way. This is just in the interest of intellectual honesty and having a complete series here. Catalyst hasn't done enough to convince me to stop, but should you so choose, there's going to be another video talking about that. And I'll need to re-record it. I got a better camera here, and picture looks, at least from what I can see here, the picture looks a little bit better. So anyway, all right. There's a handful of things that might come up. The big one you're probably going to come across is that there was an author who worked for the company named Blaine Lee Pardoe. I mentioned this in the past video. Now, as I mentioned, he was, to the best of my knowledge, on like a work-for-hire basis. So he was not like a permanent employee, as I understand it. So whenever I say they fired him, what I mean is they basically said, we won't be calling you back. But in the interest of keeping things a little concise here, I'm going to say fired. But that's what I mean when I say that. Now, we only have Blaine's side of the story. I have no reason to not trust him, but I would prefer to hear what the other side has to say to form a complete picture. And because Catalyst is actually being somewhat professional and not saying why they let him go, we don't have that. And that's kind of the drawback to whenever a company actually does what they're supposed to do in this kind of situation, because as I mentioned, well, I don't know. I think they're headquartered in Washington, in Seattle, I believe. Now, I don't know what the state laws are in Washington, and I'm not a lawyer, but I know in most states you can terminate employment at will. But where you get into trouble is if you actually state a reason. And if you just say something like "for cause," I think is the term people use. Again, not a lawyer. I don't know for sure. Not claiming that's what they said. Any of that, you know the drill. But you don't want to actually give a reason, because then they can potentially try to sue you. If they can demonstrate that there are other employees who are engaged in similar activities who've not been fired, or any number of other things. Okay, so you don't want to give them cause, which give the person a cause to sue you for firing them. And so that's why you don't say anything. Which makes, people in my position that want to talk what amounts to gossip, we really can't because there's nothing to go on. So, from Blaine's perspective, it came down to his political persuasion. He's conservative. I believe he's conservative. His writings tend to go that way, so I believe he is personally. And if he's not, then I apologize. I'm not trying to assign any political persuasion to him that he doesn't possess, but I'm given to understand that's his situation. Now, from his his coverage of the events, he has written a number of books that are political in nature, and they are conservative in nature. And I've not read them myself, so I'm not speaking from any kind of knowledge of what they actually contain. I'm going by what other people are saying about them. I've not personally ever got the hints of that from his BattleTech fiction, so I don't know. But he claims that he told Catalyst before he began publishing this series of books that is supposedly the problem, and they gave him the okay because he went to them, knowing that, he is one of the faces of the company, and that there are, to put it mildly, busybodies who will attack anything and everything that doesn't align with them politically. And while these people do exist on both sides, I believe anyone paying any attention at all knows which way the majority of them tend to lean. And so, he knew this was going to be an issue, and presumably he knew that most of the people at the company have more of a left-leaning bias. And that's not a negative against them, That's just the way it is. And likewise, I've never really seen that bleed through in other fiction either. So I believe everyone there seems to be able to keep everything out of the game and the fiction. So, at least from my perspective. So, he told him this, and he was given the go-ahead to go ahead and publish the other works. And then eventually it became a problem. And it supposedly has to do with an individual that harassed him online to the point that he has received judgments against them in civil cases. So this person is a known harasser, also a liar. Like, this is a person who claimed to be a single woman, I believe claimed to be a lesbian, I want to say a nurse, I don't remember all the details. Middle-aged guy living in his parents' basement, apparently. So, yeah. And somehow they're involved in all this. And again, this is from what Blaine has said, we don't know the counter side of this. And so I would have to think that the people at Catalyst obviously knew Blaine's political persuasions, and didn't seem to have a problem with him up to this point. Which is why, in my opinion, this is pure speculation, what probably happened was this person went to Topps, who's the actual owner of the BattleTech IP, and gave him some song and dance. And being a larger corporation, they're probably the kind of company that just called up Catalyst, like, you guys want to keep the license, just make this problem go away. Didn't want to hear anything. And, like, you've got other authors, just let them go. We don't want the controversy. That could very well be what happened. And given the fact that Catalyst has, like I said, they've acted professional about it. Blaine still works with someone who works at Catalyst for his current venture, which I don't remember what the name of the title of the series is, and I haven't read any of the books yet. I'm going to read the first book, see if it's any good. And if it is, I'll, talk about it on here. And, because I do like the books of his that he's written for BattleTech. So I think he's a decent writer. And from the premise I got from one of the interviews he gave sounded interesting. So I'll give it a shot. I have no tremendous interest at all in the political leaning book. Like, I don't go in for that. So you're not going to see a review of that on here anytime soon, if ever. But anyway, so his side of the story is out there, and people have taken sides. And one byproduct of this is that there are just stupidly toxic people on a number of the BattleTech Facebook groups who just can't stop talking about it. And by and large, it's not people who are complaining that he was fired. It's people complaining about people complaining he was fired. Now, I don't stay on I don't live on Facebook. Facebook is a cesspool. But I see a lot more complaining about the complaining than the actual complaining. And that's typical for the kinds of people that champion these things. People who are fans of cancel culture, which is what this ultimately is in all likelihood, they're terrible people, okay? I mean, that's all there is to it. Like, I just have no idea how a rational person can feel the desire to drive someone out of a job. You know, if you don't like his books, don't read them. You know, like no one is forcing you to read them. And I'd say the same thing for the other authors who still work for Catalyst, who I know are left-leaning. Like, they shouldn't be canceled because of their beliefs either. You know, as near as I can tell, none of it makes its way into the fiction, so who cares? But anyway, that's the major thing you're likely to come across. And then Blaine is out there. He's done some interviews. You'll see his side of it. Like I said, Catalyst has been professional about it, which and Blaine still works with someone who works at Catalyst, and Catalyst posted a congratulatory message on one of the social medias. I think it was Facebook. Whenever the first book for their new series came out. There's another book that has just come out involving the Jade Falcons, and the author of it had to lay out the books you'll need to read to understand it, which includes a couple of Blaine's books. They didn't try to Soviet memory hole him down the rabbit hole that you'll never see again. They acknowledge the books exist. He's telling you need to read them. So these are professional moves, which again, this is why I keep coming back to, I think it was probably Topps, because Catalyst isn't acting like they burned the bridge between them. They're acting like something came up, they had to let him go, but they're not going to be dicks about it. So I don't know, it's hard to say, and we'll probably never get the full story, so it is what it is. But that's the major thing you're likely to come across. There's a minor thing involving the naming of one of the tanks in the game. It has, since the beginning, been known as the Rommel/Patton tank, because depending on which of the great houses is building it, if it's, I'm assuming House Steiner, because it's Space Germany, calls it the Rommel tank, named for Erwin Rommel, the German tank commander during World War II, because the other one is named for George Patton, the American tank commander during World War II. And yeah, no one seemed to have a problem with it. And then just out of the blue, they said they were just going to stop using the Rommel part of the name. And the Rommel had different armaments, I believe, but it uses the same model. Like if you go to Ironwood Metals to buy them, it's literally just called the Rommel/Patton tank, or Patton Rommel. I think it's Rommel Patton. It's the same model and same artwork. So now Catalyst is producing them in plastic, so it's plausible, and I think this is probably what happened, that they decided they didn't want to confuse people with this unit, so they didn't want to have two names to the same unit, slash like that, because the clan mechs all have two names, but they go by one or the other, typically for the products. And it's other products that tell you that they have a second name. So I don't think there was any kind of... I don't think they changed the name because, yes, Rommel was a German fighting for the Germans during World War II. You can have the debate over whether or not he was part of the German Socialist Party or not, because technically he wasn't, but at the same time, he's fighting under their flag, so, kind of is. But that's not the point. I'm not going down that particular rabbit hole, and it ultimately doesn't matter. We're not here to rehash which particular faction of the German hierarchy Rommel was on 80 years ago. Doesn't matter. But the thing is, if that's the reason for the name change, then there are several other units that are also named for people on the not good side in World War II. Some for the Japanese. Technically, the Russians are part of the Allies, but given that they're, commies and had a significantly more massive death toll later on, probably shouldn't be naming things after them either, if you're concerned about things like that. Which is why I think it's the dual name thing is probably the real reason. And again, we'll probably never know. I mean, we'll literally never know because they banned talking about it on the forums. Which does bring me to one of the other issues, is that for better or worse, the official forums are very heavily regulated. Now, you could argue that keeps things on point and keeps things from meandering into off-topic conversations, and that's fine. But it means that the forums are kind of dull. Now, they've got good reasons. I'm sure that there have been incidents in the past I wasn't privy to that led to all this. But in my opinion, forums are better when there's some leeway and conversations are allowed to go where they go. That keeps them interesting. Now, if your forums are mainly just to talk about your products, well, you want to keep it on topic. I get that, I'm not criticizing them for it. This is just a warning before you go to the official forums that's a potential thing that you're going to come across. So expect it. Let's see. Then there was a recent issue involving the moderation of a Discord server in the BattleTech Reddit. And I don't know all the ins and outs of this, but it sounds like someone that was recently hired by Catalyst did some things behind the scenes. This is the way it sounds. I wasn't privy to any of this. I don't go to the BattleTech Reddit because everything I care about is on the forums or the Facebook groups. But it would appear that they swapped out the moderators on the Reddit, and this has been for the worse. The traffic there has plummeted. I don't know if that's in reaction to that or if it's just been slow, but I would say it has to be in reaction to something. I didn't go there to begin with, so I don't know. I don't know if it's due to the actual event and people are protesting, or if it's due to the new moderation team is terrible at their job, or something. I don't know. But the point is, it's apparently taken a nosedive, so I would stick with the official forums, venture onto Reddit at your peril. I mentioned it before, but I'm going to mention it again. A number of the Facebook groups are just good luck is all I'm going to say. Now, the Facebook group about the novels is on point. And they appear to actually have rules that make sense. For instance, don't criticize any of the authors, past or present. You can criticize their work, because it's a book, talk about novels, so obviously you can be critical. But don't attack the author, don't attack the other posters. And it looks like they run a tight ship there. So BattleTech novels, I'll link to it in the description. Seems to be a good one. The others, good luck. I mean, you'll see a lot of paint jobs, and you will see discussion, but so many posts. And I know this sounds hypocritical given what I just said, but so many posts have nothing to do with BattleTech. I mean, a lot of times they're just complaining about Warhammer 40K, and then they think they're being smart or sneaky or something when they're like, oh, look at this problem with Warhammer 40K. I bet the same people over here have problems with it over here, and whoever reacts, I'll put them on my little list. Those people need to get a life. They're terrible people. They're toxic people. I would just say avoid them at all costs if I were you, but that's just my advice. I keep making the mistake of going back to these places, but oh well, it's a good thing I don't make videos right after I read those things, because I wouldn't sound like I was a very big fan of this community. But anyway, the novels one is on point. Okay, and then the new thing is, there have been some issues with their Kickstarters, and I'm going to go through these in order. I believe the Shadowrun Kickstarter, I think people are still owed stuff from that, and it seems like communication has just kind of dropped off. I didn't back it, so I don't know, but that's what I hear. Next would be the Clan Invasion, the BattleTech, the big first one, the Clan Invasion Kickstarter. There are technically still some items that we are owed from that. It's primarily fiction, so I don't want to sound like I don't care about that, because I do. I read the books, I care about the lore, but the primary reason I backed that was for the miniatures, and I got everything I paid for there. And I made out like a bandit in terms of dollar per mech and all that stuff. So if we never get those other things, I don't care. I really don't. That's not why I backed it. But they were promised. So it's not a good look if they aren't eventually delivered upon. And there's a thing where you could get a character, an official character, if you backed above a certain level. And I believe I'm still owed 2 of them. So another group has finally come in and trying to clean up all the lists to get an actual listing of here's who all backed, here's the information they gave us, here's who's actually been put into the books, which is another thing I believe Blaine Pardoe did, is he actually mentioned a list of some of the people who'd actually used for the books, so you know if you're in the book or not. Yeah, so another group is trying to sort through all that. Hopefully they get that all sorted out. And again, if I don't get it, I'm just going to regret having not taken the credit, because I had 3 of them. I took credit for 1 of them. So I'll regret having not taken the credit for the other 2 if I don't ultimately get them. But if I don't get them, again, I'm not out anything. So it just sucks and doesn't look good on the company. And now we come to the current Kickstarter, the Mercenaries Kickstarter. This has not shipped yet. And there's already been one incident of a thing that was for the Kickstarter that somehow wound up, the official story is it wound up with the people who do Barnes & Nobles, all the gaming stuff. And since it's actually kind of difficult to get into Barnes & Noble, they asked, can we go ahead and put this stuff on the shelf? And Catalyst said yes, because they want an increased presence in Barnes & Noble. And I don't fault them if that's what really happened, and I don't have a reason to believe otherwise, although the story's a little sketchy. But if that's what actually happened, I don't fault them for doing that. It doesn't look good, because that was a Kickstarter thing, and now people that are going to get it are going to get it after it's been available to the public. So that kind of sucks, and it doesn't look good. But, I'm not going to complain about it. And I am one of the people that's supposed to get one for free. Well, free. It's Kickstarter. You had to pay for it, but you know what I mean. But yeah, other than that, then we come to the final thing, which is the shipping debacle, where everyone they posted what you're going to pay for shipping, because they didn't collect shipping at the Kickstarter. They waited till just now when it's actually here in the U.S. and everything. So mine was originally $150 or really close to it for a $500 some odd order, which is insane, especially since it's coming from Georgia. It almost would have been cheaper for me to drive there and get it. Almost. If I had 3 or 4 people I could pool with, definitely would have been. So they recalculated. There's some things where they had the wrong dimensions of some things in the computer, and it was a thing that almost everyone got. So it looked like everyone needed to use more boxes and everything. And mine ultimately came down to $70. And I still think that's a little high, but they had a fund where if you talk to them and you're like, hey, this is a little off here, they would give you a choice of a further reduction or credit for the store. I took the store credit. Probably going to use it for the Urban Mech Lamb, in fact. So Anyway, that is a thing. They've now charged everyone for shipping, I believe. So, it's past the point of no return on that one. But it's an issue. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it here. Someone did post a comment in the other video about it, and now they took it to the extreme of, well, you shouldn't do anything with Catalyst, I think, or they shouldn't back Kickstarter or something. I think that's a bit extreme. Now, of course, you're free to obviously follow his advice, but like I told him, did you email Catalyst like the thing said to email? I never got a response, so I'm guessing he didn't. Or he might not even back the Kickstarter, who knows. I would appreciate if you'd follow up on that, though. I'm curious. I welcome all opinions, even if I don't agree with them. So, anyway, that's the litany of things you're probably going to come across if you start delving into what has happened recently with Catalyst and BattleTech. Oh, I mentioned Wizkids. Sorry, I forgot. You're going to see a lot of hate towards Wizkids because they produced a different version of the game from the early 2000s to, I don't know, 2010, 2012, somewhere in there. I'm probably getting that date wrong. I apologize. I've got a whole video about it, or 2 videos about it, actually. I will try to link them above or down in the description or both, explaining the whole rigmarole with that. And, but yeah, there's a lot of hate towards Wizkids out there. They have nothing to do with the game anymore. They did set up a lot of the current events in the game. 31 novels were published under them, I believe. 30, 31, somewhere in there. And they are kind of crucial to what the current moment in the storyline where Catalyst picked up the ball. And so events happen there that are important, but you don't need to worry about the click-e-tech game. That is long since gone. So yeah, you might run into some Wizkids hate because it's still out there. And beyond that, the other thing you're going to come across is there are people that are dead set in playing in certain eras of the game. You have people that do not want to go past 3025, basically the intro tech. You've got people that stop at the clan invasion, people that go up to the jihad, and then the Dark Age and the Ill Clan era now. So you've got different eras of the game, and you're going to see some people fight for those eras. Some people absolutely hate the clans and everything to do with them, and they will be very vocal about this, to the point of potentially being rude. Most of what you're going to see is, I believe, good-natured, except maybe the hatred towards the Capellans. People seem to really go into for that one. I don't know. Check out my other videos. You'll see my thoughts on the Capellans. If I wasn't filming in my car, I'd have my giant Capellan flag and hat on right now. But, I'm in the car, so. But yeah, so those are the kinds of things you're going to potentially run into. And this is all, external to the game itself. For the game itself, you're not going to run into any of this. Everyone just wants to sit around and shoot each other with giant stompy robots. So, these are all externalities, and if I'm advising people to come to the game, I feel like I should tell you, because especially if you left Warhammer because of shenanigans, you should know what you're going to potentially come across here. Again, I don't think any of it's game breaking, but you might. But if you're hooked on the idea, but don't want to deal with the current company for some reason, and I'm not condoning that course of action, I'm just saying it's an option. There will be another video, a final video in the little series here, talking about other ways to engage with BattleTech without having to engage with Tops, Catalyst, Wizkids, So yeah, look for that video. But otherwise, comment down below. Last video got a lot of comments, a lot of interaction. That was nice. So let me know what you think here. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It's YouTube. Check out the first video if you haven't seen it. It'll be linked to in the description. Probably the first video that I linked to here. It's way late in the video to be talking about that now. But always remember, no guts, no galaxy.